Welcome to Chromatic Counsel Podcast, the podcast where law, leadership, and color collide. I'm your host, Kerry Heaps, and we've got a great show lined up for you today. And I'm so excited to welcome Rob Basso. I've interviewed Rob in the past, over the past probably 10 years, but he is an entrepreneur, a speaker, a business growth strategist, known as the everyday entrepreneur. He has spent more than 2 decades building, scaling, and successfully exiting companies in the payroll and HR space, including businesses that were acquired by public companies at top-tier valuations. And today he helps leaders and founders strengthen their personal brand, improve visibility, and turn their expertise into business growth through strategy, storytelling, and systems that scale. He's a published author, frequent media contributor, and a highly sought-after speaker on entrepreneurship, leadership, and what it really takes to build companies that last and exit well. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kerry. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to have you on the show because I really feel like what you've been working on lately can really be helpful for attorneys that are listening to the program. But I would love for you to tell everyone, because you've built and sold multiple companies, what was the moment that you realized no longer just running a business, but building an asset that needs systems and structure to scale well?
Well, it's interesting because I've got asked this question in multiple ways, and I like the way that you asked it because, when I first started my business, the first day I had an idea of when I'd be selling the business. And I don't think that's common for a 22-year-old to be thinking about exiting a business they were just starting. But for me, looking at mentors in the marketplace and people that I knew, they had exited their businesses at some point. So whether that was going to be 5 years for me or 10 years for me or 20 years for me, really from day one, I realized that I was building an asset to eventually monetize in a big way. Now, did that mean I knew exactly how it was going to play out or exactly how I was going to do it? No, absolutely not. I took a circuitous path to get to my exit from the first big company that I started. And it all started, from, a simple idea on a one-page spreadsheet that turned into, a significant business that a public company eventually bought.
Yeah. And I know we've talked before. We met, I guess, 15 years ago.
It's probably more than that, Carrie. It could be close
Maybe.
to 20
Yeah.
with aging ourselves. So
I know. And like I said, I remember, when Everyday Entrepreneur came out with the book, and like so many different things happened during this journey. Looking back, what was one system or process that you really wish you would have implemented earlier?
Well,
With one of your first
right. Well,
businesses.
we were trying to be a growth organization, even though at the very beginning it was just me selling. But I have to say, I wasn't the most organized individual. While I had tons of ideas, those ideas, I was like, chasing feral cats. Sometimes I would run to the shiniest object. So for me, keeping organized on all the prospects and things, I was not very good at it, even though I was good at closing deals. So for my organization, I would say a customer relationship management tool would have been wildly helpful. I wasn't even using an Excel spreadsheet at the time. I was handwriting things. Excel existed and CRMs actually existed back then. So if I had a system like that to really properly categorize and track everything, every interaction, I think I would have done even better than I'd done faster because I forgot a lot of stuff. And believe it or not, I probably missed meetings at the beginning of my career because I just wasn't able to keep it all together.
Yeah. And I think too, I remember back, gosh, remember Zoho when Zoho first came out and everybody was
I
like,
do.
oh, wow, this is so
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
With attorneys, because I think too, attorneys really struggle with this, with follow up and, they have leads that are coming in and, regardless of what type of law they practice, they do also rely heavily on referrals and personal effort, networking. Where do you see the biggest breakdown when it comes to follow up and client or prospect systems? What's been the biggest thing that you see?
I've had the pleasure to work with a lot of successful and really great attorneys. But one thing that seems to ring true is they're so busy doing the good work for the clients that their ability to follow up properly, especially in the prospect stage, is probably below average as a class. And that doesn't mean every attorney does it poorly, but I think their single biggest breakdown is not having a systematic approach and a flow in which they communicate with prospects. Sometimes I can remember this literally just happened to me 2 weeks ago. So in my new business, I wanted to trademark something. And I met a trademark attorney at a particular event. And I followed up with them 3 or 4 days with this. I said, I'd like to use, absolutely. I'll be contacting you tomorrow with the agreement. Ghost town, never heard from him. Now, I guarantee that's not because he's a horrible attorney. I honestly think didn't write it down, didn't have a system of follow-up, didn't have a CRM, and therefore there is zero chance I will be using that attorney, even if he called me now and it's been 3 weeks. So simply a follow-up systematic approach when they're prospecting.
And I do think that's something that, and I've heard from other attorneys where they tell me, oh, we're not taught any of this in law school. We're not taught like how to market ourselves, how to, and I understand why. But I also think too, do you feel like sometimes with attorneys, it could be too that they're kind of like, oh, not just so much a system, but also to a personality trait maybe, or like that they feel like they're selling and they feel like that's so against the grain of what they do. Do you think that's kind of filtering into it as well?
I think it could be. I absolutely think it could be part of it. Again, fortunately or unfortunately, in some cases, I've dealt with attorneys a lot when you run a business for good reasons and for bad reasons. And I think a lot of it has to do, again, with just their level of professionalism and the time they give to the actual work that they're doing. And yeah, I imagine that a personality that lends itself towards that type of deep thinking and organization with the client and understanding copy and context, especially in business law or any kind of law for that matter. I do believe you're probably right, Kerry, that it is a personality trait. And not for nothing, attorneys, put themselves way up here on the food chain when it comes to I'm an attorney, I'm a physician, and that's great, but not when it's in the detriment to your client relationship. And listen, fortunately, my current legal staff that does work for me, I've just been extremely thrilled with. But here's the crazy thing. I've had to have conversations with them about the way they choose to communicate. And some law firms think it's perfectly fine to get back to you within 3 to 5 days to an email you send. What? 3 to 5 days? That's wildly unacceptable, I think, in any business, unless you're on vacation or you got hit by a bus. If you can't do it, get a junior to do it, get a receptionist to do it, get an executive assistant to do it. Somebody should respond. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear the responses. Well, it's busy. What they're doing is they're categorizing how important that particular message is. And I get it, but I see it differently because attorneys, physicians, they're in no different position than me and you. They are in the service business. It might be the business of law, but at the end of the day, they're there to service their clients. And if the clients feel neglected or forgotten about, or God forbid, less important than another client, that's what ends up damaging a practice.
Yeah, definitely. And if you were advising a law firm owner right now that's listening that wants to really scale beyond themselves, what are the first 3 systems you would put in place for like leads and follow-up and client retention? Where would you start with them?
Well, let's kind of start at a 10,000 foot view. Even if it's a small firm, if they don't have some sort of CRM, which stands for, people might not know, customer relationship management tool, like Zoho, like Salesforce, like HubSpot, that is the single most important thing to the stability of their practice. It's not just for communicating with new potential clients. It creates the entire culture in which you communicate with your current clients. It is absolutely proven that when you spend time marketing and communicating with softly to current clients, you can grow revenue by up to 25% within your current client base. You don't even have to go get a new client. You just have to put the system in place to be able to do it. So a CRM step is number 1. Number 2 would be a lead capture tool. And that could be a forum of some sort, whether it's on your LinkedIn, whether it's on your website, to gather that data and then automatically push it to whatever CRM system that you're using. So without a human ever touching it, it just appears in the CRM system. And then lastly, the cadence in which you'll communicate and the tenor in which you'll communicate on an ongoing basis with that prospect before and after the meeting. Too many law firms and too many professional firms, they'll make a telephone call, they'll follow up, but if the client or the prospect doesn't follow up with them, it tends to just fall off because they're so busy doing what they're doing, they forget that the client relationship starts probably even before you meet the client, when the referral gets made to you, when they look at your LinkedIn profile. All of that matters. And if you show this wonderful glossy picture of how awesome the firm is, and then immediately after fail to communicate in the way the client expects to be communicated, how could you expect that outcome to be positive? And it's not just attorneys, it's lots of professionals that fall down in this area.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Now, attorneys that feel uncomfortable in that self-promoting role, like we talked about earlier, would you reframe branding so it feels authentic instead of, I hate to use this word, but salesy?
Well, self-promotion is really about ego, but visibility is really about service to others. And I reframe it by basically saying, this is your brand, but it's turned way up. So I stick away from the concept of self-promotion and just turning up the brand volume in what a professional you are, how awesome you are in a particular area of law that you serve, and communicating with your best efforts the way you choose to communicate why you'd be, the attorney of choice for a particular matter that a particular client is looking for. So it's not really self-promotion. Self-promotion would be if you're a, YouTube star or something like that, doing something wild and wacky to get attention. But showing somebody how professional you are and how good you are, and that you're a master of your craft and that you're a leader in your industry is far from self-promotion. That is self-confidence showing itself to the public. And why wouldn't you want your attorney to be supremely self-confident, or your surgeon when you're going in for surgery? So visibility does not mean self-promotion. It means capability and growth.
Yeah. And I think too, sometimes that's where they get everybody does, like you said, gets kind of hung up on that follow-up because they feel like, oh, I'm selling to them, I'm following up. I feel like I don't want to corner them. And that's not the case at all. So I love that you shared that. Now, obviously the show is called Chromatic Counsel. So I always like to ask all of my guests a question about color and wardrobe. You speak a lot. You share a lot of stages you have over the years. So you're very visible in front of audiences. Do you think certain colors naturally draw more attention, trust, or engagement when you're on stage? Are there certain colors you gravitate towards? Do you try to stay within your logo? Like, what's your feel on
everybody that? Everybody has a different look about them, and every color might be different on an individual. I'm not wearing green today, but when I wear green, my hazel eyes look bright green, and I know this, so I tend to wear those colors. On the other hand, I like the warm blues and a pop of color. Even in my own office that you see right now, even the shirt that I'm wearing, it's just slightly different. It's got a teeny pop of color. It's not bright. You see the picture back here. It's got some color in the background. It creates energy. So colors create energy in what you're doing. If you come on stage or you're on a camera with these muted tones and you look drab, and therefore people think that you are. It doesn't mean you need to come out in a clown suit with a red nose or a bright fuchsia colored thing. But to be quite honest, it wouldn't hurt. Case in point, the guy who runs the Savannah Bananas, don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's a gentleman and he wears a yellow suit and a yellow top hat. Now he's promoting a fun type of baseball entertainment game, but it blew up. And that signature yellow suit is who he is to the world. When you're an attorney, I don't recommend you wear a yellow suit with a top hat, but it doesn't mean people might try. So I want to be careful.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't think about what looks best on you and what will attract people to you. And I think a lot of professionals they rely heavily just on their skills and their ability. Well, they should, because that's really only what they get paid for. But we're talking about how they present themselves to the world to get the positive attention that they need.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you shared that, because blue is definitely our trust building color. And I remember that's in the, I know I saw that I figured you would say blue, but in the everyday entrepreneur, isn't that cover also? There's some blue in that, if I remember
No,
correctly.
I think it's yellow, and it's actually yellow and green, which is
Yellow and
interesting.
green. Okay, it was
Now,
green.
Harry, I wish I had to say I had a voice in what the publisher color they wanted to do my book cover in, because I would have picked something slightly different. It did pop on the shelves, I have to say, because of the color that they chose. But
Mm-hmm.
it is a personal preference, but there is no reason you can't have your own preference, but also make it attractive in a particular way to other individuals.
Absolutely. And last question here. If you had to give attorneys one non-obvious piece of advice about growth and systems, what would it be and why?
I would say, even if you're a starting practice, to document everything. Document the communications with your clients. Document the things that you're doing during your day. And part of the reason is, the only way you can create a system is to not only know how you work, but how to put those pieces together. And even if you've got a great memory, you can't possibly remember all the voluminous things that happen in an 8 or 9, or if you're an attorney, 10 to 12 hour workday, to actually start creating these systems. So the documentation of your communications with your clients makes a massive difference, because then you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, these clients like to communicate this way. This set of client likes to communicate in this particular fact. Oh, this one only wants to be text. They don't want to be called. They want to be text. Okay. But if you don't have that marked down or communicated somewhere in a cadence with a particular client, with my client base, I literally probably have 6 different modes of communication that each one is tasked to within my CRM system. So I don't even have to think about it. My systems automatically will be communicating the way the client wants to communicate. So for me, that's one of the big things you can do. Document, and then figure out the best communication methods with your individual clients.
I love that. And I want to thank you, Rob, today for joining me on the show. Is there anything that you'd like to share with the listening audience? Anything you've got coming up, a new event, book, or anything with the
I
business?
don't have,
We're going to
I
have a
don't
link
have.
in the show notes. So yeah,
Oh,
so they
good.
can get in
Okay,
touch with you.
you can still get my
Yeah.
book on Amazon, and it's still available, and it's evergreen. I think people will really enjoy it, whether you're a new entrepreneur or someone who's been around the block. One thing I would like to share is that one of the things that we do, and we do really well, is we help craft impossible to ignore personal brands. And we do that not only from our work on LinkedIn for individual clients, but also through our CRM and AI automation tools that we employ with our clients. Too many customers or people out in the world think that if you just do one of these things, you're going to solve the problem. It's not. It needs to come full circle. So your brand speaks to people. Your brand speaks to people in a particular way. But if you're not using that brand to generate revenue in a systematic approach, it's not going to do what you want it to do. If you get all these likes and people paying attention to you, great. But if it doesn't move the needle revenue wise, then we're back to, look at me. It's a vanity play. I guarantee you, your listeners, your high-level professional attorneys might care about the vanity play in a certain sense, but what they care about a lot more is, how many new clients can I bring to the table? And that's what we help people do.
Awesome. So this is good for a solo entrepreneur, attorney, or even somebody that's working at a mid-sized firm, regardless of where
It,
they're at.
it really could be anybody that's at a leadership level. Listen, I'm not going to lie. Our price point is not $200 a month. We have a professional staff. I've been doing this a long time. You could go and find somebody on the web to do it for cheaper. You could find a large agency to do it for double my price. We're looking for the right executives that realize they need the help, and they want another professional that's actually a peer, someone who's been there, done that. In fact, many of my clients reach out to me for business advice, because I've sold 2 significant companies to public companies. I've invested in 10 companies. I'm on the board of 2 of them, and I've invested in venture capital funds. So they look to me not just to help them with their profile, but for general business advice. While I don't charge for that, when we have a relationship with clients, this is what we do.
Awesome. Well, again, Rob, thank you so much for joining me on the program. And if you want to get in touch with Rob, click on one of the links in the show notes below. This is a wrap for this episode of Chromatic Counsel. And if you liked what you heard, I hope you'll hit the like button, click subscribe so you know when we drop our next episode. And as always, we are wishing you continued success.